welcome to the Societal Lens. I'm here with Charlie and Aidan, and today our topic is the state of American politics. We are the Concave Group, and I'm already getting a look from Charlie. Would you like to expand further?
The fact that you changed the title and
The
the
state
intro.
of American politics.
It's an overview of American politics.
Well, the overview is the state.
The state of American politics is that it is bad. This episode would be 3 seconds long if that's what it was.
No, but it's comedy because America has states,
States.
and I'm saying it's the state
States.
of American politics.
Yeah, you could have run that
Because
by me.
it wouldn't be funny if I explained the joke.
It's a
beforehand.
surprise.
Exactly. See, Aidan gets me.
I always get. So now we all know who is here.
Anyway, so we're like a month into the election results, and I think we all know what happened. Was anyone else? What happened?
Hold on, spoiler warning for any of you guys not caught up with the US elections.
Spoilers ahead.
Spoilers ahead. Trump won.
What?
Yeah, I know.
So,
Were any of you guys like watching the election results
Yeah.
in the morning or like the evening?
yeah,
like I
going
was?
to school, even in the UK, that's what everyone was talking
It's
about.
all I spoke about for the entire day. I'm sure I bored a lot of people.
I remember at work checking. Oh, okay, this is Kamala's gonna win, and then I remember Kamala did not win.
I remember just like, oh god damn it, she didn't get Michigan. And like, I was so invested in the whole election for like, for a good reason, because like, I think a lot of people have the attitude of where it's like, oh, you're British, why do you care about American politics? And it's because it affects all of us.
It's a part of the world, and all the different countries have connections with each other. Obviously, it matters.
It's one of our closest allies.
And America's one of the biggest economies in the world.
Oh yeah,
We are not going to be like, oh, it's fine. If they affect us, it's major.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
in the Great Depression, if any of you remember this. No.
No.
If
You only know it as
any-
history.
If any,
Personally, there, sure, yeah.
if any of our viewers grew up during the Depression, you know what that was like.
Yeah, if any of our 15 viewers, it's less than that.
No,
it's
15
like-
now.
Maybe one of
Oh
them's
my
like a 115-year-old man or woman.
Potentially. So, Julia, there are a lot of theories as to why Kamala lost this election, and you've looked into
I
some
have,
of these
yes.
theories.
I genuinely have not been off the internet since. I know a lot of people kind of logged out and just took a step back. I was not one of those people. I was like scouring, trying to figure out where everything went wrong.
Go on
And
then,
I
pop
think-
off, Queen.
A lot of the reason as to why I personally think Kamala lost is that she was just kind of like a stand-in candidate, because when Biden dropped out, and good for him for doing so, because it would have been even worse if he hadn't, when Biden dropped out, Kamala only had about like a couple of months to like wrangle together an election, and that wasn't enough for people to know who she properly was, because like you don't really know much about the vice president, you know what I mean? Like, I only know that Obama's vice president was Joe Biden because he told me. So,
Obama told you. Huh?
Personally,
What was he
Julia
like?
actually didn't know about
no. Joe Biden told me. He's like, oh yeah, when I was vice president, I was like, ah, yes. And it's not the worst thing in the world to be someone's vice president, but because the economy has been on, like, the downward slope that it has, a lot of people see Kamala as that sort of representation of what they're currently dissatisfied with. There was like a thing floating around the internet that really annoyed me that was like, if Donald Trump was going to destroy the world, he'd have done it in his first term. And if Kamala wanted to save the world, she'd do it in her first term. But that's not actually accurate, because...
It takes longer than that.
Yeah, exactly. And also, she's not even in control of, like, most things. The vice president does, like, shockingly little. So even if she wanted to, she wouldn't have been able to. And... yeah, another kind of theory that people have is that it's because a lot of Kamala's they say I'm not saying this. They say that a lot of Kamala's policies were geared towards women and minorities, and so like the white men felt alienated. But it's actually kind of odd because Kamala's a gun owner. She made a point of cozying up to conservatives, which like the Democrats themselves weren't thrilled about. But she still lost, and that is because in Donald Trump he has entered what's called the modern day infallible zone, where as long as he's like the Republicans' guy, he can do no wrong. And a lot of people remember the economy under Trump being better because it was pre-COVID, and so everyone's voting for that because, you know, the price at, like, it doesn't matter if women lose their right to abortion because, you know, the price of eggs was lower. And so it is kind of partly just, I don't want to say being uneducated, but that's kind of what I'm saying.
Well, the thing is with American demographies, like you say in the economy, a lot of Americans American people aren't in the wealthy position, they are going to vote for what's going to give them the best politically and economically.
Yeah, and we saw the same thing actually with the Conservatives in that they had a lot in the UK, and they had a lot of the working class vote for a really long time, because if you are working class and you look at all these rich people, you think, they've got money, they must know how to make money and therefore give me money. But that's not actually how it works, because, conglomerates.
I mean, also the idea of, like, going to the idea of Christian values, it often is linked to Republican ideas, and the idea of that is quite socialized into a lot of Americans of Christianity, that they often just think, I must vote Trump, because that's what they've been taught from a young age.
Because we've seen the problem in the 2024 election, where a lot of people, at least seemingly to us, have been voting directly against their best interests. So a lot of Hispanic people, for example, voted for Trump, despite the fact that things that him and his campaign said about Hispanic peoples were just horrifically racist. I think we all remember, he's eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, calling Puerto Rico a garbage island, and threatening to deport actual legal immigrants. And it's a phenomenon that I don't think we've seen since the anti-communist Cold War era with Reagan.
What would you say about people that are saying that the reason that Kamala lost is because she's a woman, and more importantly, a woman of colour?
Oh, absolutely. They didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, who was Bill Clinton, a very famous Democrat and good, and an okay president. So if they wouldn't vote for a white woman, it is highly unlikely that a half black, half Indian woman of colour was ever going to get elected by the American people, simply because there's a level of systemic racism in the American political system, even in the hearts of the most liberal of Americans, that has still yet to be addressed, as well as just casual run-of-the-mill sexism.
I mean, the thing is, that's what a lot of people were hoping for, that we would get this first woman president, this first non-white president, that's also a woman, and
I was hoping for that.
I think we all were. A lot of people in the UK were, but I think in America that's just not what people really want in democracies.
I just don't think they're ready for it yet, just because America, in comparison to the UK, because we've had quite a few women leaders lately, and they haven't all been great. But that's not the point. It's not because they're women. And the point is, America was founded on this very Puritan ideology. That's what the Pilgrims were. They were Puritans. England and the Netherlands were too heathenish for them, so they just, started a new country. And so you have these very, ultra-conservative Puritan views at the heart of American democracy and the minds of people. And so that sentiment against anyone who's not a WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, is still present and, having a bad effect on elections like the 2024 presidential election.
I mean, the elections have a lot... we've spoken a lot about the economy and how that's influenced, but a lot of people are also trying to ignore and think the other policies that they are doing are also right, even if some may disagree with it, such as education policies. What was the project that you researched, Charlie? Was it Project 25?
Yeah, Project 2025. Honestly, I was looking at it, and there is no way in hell that I could go over the whole thing, because there is just so much on there, and to go into it in depth would take hours, and there are much better sources and videos that you can look at in your own time. But since this is an overview,
yeah, we do advise, and if you want to know more, that this is just our research, and if you want to understand more about a specific topic, please go do your own research. We will already have our links in the bio, and you can use those if you want to.
Link in bio.
Yeah.
Link in bio. Right. So in the research I did to do with Project 2025, I am going off of what I found on Wikipedia for this. Is that a major concern of Project 2025 is what they call woke propaganda in schools, and it sort of goes on to say that they propose eliminating the Department of Education and allowing states to opt out of federal programs or standards, which obviously is quite a massive change, and America already isn't known for having maybe the greatest of educations.
Yeah,
but yeah, this idea of the woke education of America, it's often influenced by religious policies as well, because
Absolutely.
as we've stated, American is very Christian. I believe it's 67% of America
It's a
Christian.
large amount.
It's
yeah.
when I looked
I
in
think so.
2023. It should be 224 million out of 300 million or something.
The thing is, I find it quite interesting that like American schools sometimes have this obsession with like being like, oh yeah, there's woke in our schools, or like, oh, the schools are too woke, when they literally have a pledge of allegiance to their own country every morning.
Yeah,
As
nationalism.
school, that's so weird. If I was in America for whatever reason, you wouldn't catch me doing any kind of pledge. That seems psychotic.
And that's another thing, because culture actually has a lot to do with the way politics are perceived. Something that is seen as like radical left-wing in America would be seen as centrist in another country, simply because of how extreme things are.
And I think with Project 2025 as well, everyone was freaking out about it because Donald Trump has made his association with Project 2025 fairly unclear, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And he's done similar things with other issues like abortion, where when Roe v. Wade was overturned, Donald Trump claims to be a mouthpiece for women and like stand up for women's rights. Yet he removed, I think, what's almost considered a fundamental right to abortion in the UK. And
In the UK?
well, yeah,
Well, in the
not-
UK
he didn't
it's
remove it in the
fundamental.
UK. In the UK, it's considered fundamental.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
sorry, clarification.
Fundamental right. Comment.
Yeah, comma. It's hard to have commas when
Why
you're
did
speaking.
that spike?
Anyway,
But the idea of Trump and his policies, he is quite a radical leader, as we have seen before.
radical right wing, just to be clear.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's left wing at all. But
Yeah, because while Trump himself didn't like drag the abortion out
No.
of the hands of these women, he appointed the Supreme Court justices that represented his interests, who then voted
Yeah.
against Roe v. Wade and made it up to states' rights, I say in quote marks, because I can't really name a single time where states' rights has ever been good for anyone.
We'll
No.
talk about states, because
States!
I can talk about states.
we love the states.
Right, okay. So, as we very well know, different states have different laws because every state in the United States is a sovereign entity in its own right and is granted the power to create laws and regulate those laws according to their needs. What that entails is that they have their own laws and can legislate those laws.
yeah, but there's like laws that there are many. But one of the big things that we focus on in the UK a lot is actually the gay rights of America. A lot of American states have these no gay, don't say gay policies, and some states are obviously worse than others. Like I think we all have heard of the Florida don't say gay ban in education system, but even other areas have also like banned fundamentally gay culture.
Yes, that also puts a lot of people in certain jobs under pressure. Teachers, for example, want teachers pressure to out their students to their parents.
Yeah, it was a big thing is that teachers had to say, oh, the student is gay if they were known about it. But teachers also couldn't show gay rights or anything that was queer, like such as rainbows, were banned in classrooms. And a lot of teachers lost their jobs for that. But also, drag is a big part of gay culture, has been very criticised and very...
Yeah, they've been really coming after drag queens lately in American politics with like drag queen story hour. Oh, they weren't happy about that.
The difficulty with drag policies is they often are like very overreaching. I think the one policy, I think it was Kansas, was something to the extent of drag shows cannot be hosted in areas close to schools, but there's such a broad range.
Yeah, it's part of like demonizing gay culture in the States by sort of passing these laws that make it seem like on par with really awful crimes when it obviously shouldn't be. But I think it is important to remember that I don't think all of American politics is bad. I think that there are some genuinely good people trying to make change. Personally, I'm a big fan of Bernie Sanders. Do you guys know Bernie?
Heard of him? No.
Oh, he's
Give
so
the audience
cool.
an introduction.
Okay, Bernie Sanders, he's this really, really old fella from New England, I think. I don't know where exactly he is, but he's always elected just because they love him just as much as I love him. And he's a perfect example of how you can be old and still progressive, so none of these people have an excuse. because I think he's like 80 now. He's older than both Trump and Biden, which is why he never really won a primary. But also he's called communist quite a lot for having vaguely left-wing beliefs, which is also a very common trend.
Small rant though about the like demonization thing. Something that I personally hate so much is that on the internet, whenever any kind of drama happens to do like a trans person, for example, there will always be at least one person that's like, oh well, the community hasn't been doing a lot of good for themselves, and they act like it is one body. They act like it is a political party that's been doing good or bad things, when it is in fact tons of people across the whole world that do not communicate with each other to do like
just one.
Because what's really important is like, I think a lot of gay and trans people, they always have to be representatives for their entire community all the time, and that's got to be exhausting.
That doesn't work because one person isn't representative of hundreds, thousands of people.
Because we different.
Because the thing is,
Yeah, it doesn't. It also doesn't allow room for human error, and sometimes there are really heinous crimes being committed, but you can't associate that with a ton of people that don't even live in the same country as that person.
Yeah, because the problem is there's lots of trans people, there's lots of gay people, and when you get people, you get crime, but you can't start equating things that have no real correlation, because if you have, like, say, 1 million trans people, chances are one of them is going to be a murderer. But you cannot then take that person and go, see, they're coming for our children, we must ban them all.
And you study crime. You can.
I do study crime.
Yeah, it's the idea that
criminology. I want to make that clear. Criminology. Let's study. I'm not in like the back alley every like Friday. We're like, all right, what do we learn at lunch today? Arson. Let's go. That's not what I'm studying.
Yeah,
I wish I could study that.
I guess it's like
for legal reasons. That's
for legal reasons. That's
I guess it's like the idea that crime is so based off official statistics. With working class crime, is the idea of that, working class commit crime, but we're only looking at a specific group.
I'm very interested to see where like the midterm elections go in 2026, just because the Republicans now control the Senate, if I'm correct on that. If I'm not, I wish I was incorrect. The Republicans control the Senate, so unless some of the Republicans aren't actually that bad, which is true, you can be a Republican and a decent human being, I think. And I am interested to see what policies get passed with that in mind, because it's only a very slim majority. But will the Democrats be able to hold out for the next, 4 years, do we think?
I think they probably will, but I just wonder what's going to happen, because this is Trump's probably, in quotation marks,
hopefully his last term.
Because this should be his last.
He's not Roosevelt. He shouldn't get another term.
Well, can he? He can, but he can't.
He can't legally, but
he can change the law.
But you could also legally get an abortion 2 years ago.
So who knows?
Who knows?
But if Trump is not to run again, I wonder how that's going to affect politics, because a lot of people vote for Trump and not Republican.
I think what they're planning is because they know Donald Trump's old, and I just don't know how he's won this election based on that. But they know he's old, and so if Trump dies somewhat through his term, I think their next big man is J.D. Vance. And yes. I think that's why he's agreed to be this position, even though all of Trump's cabinet ministers have called him the devil or something beforehand. Which is it's just a staple of how much this should not have been allowed to happen. But so I think their plan is to have J.D. Vance become president, which will be an odd thing to watch. But to be fair, I did actually like the vice presidents we were given in this election. I don't like J.D. Vance. I feel like that's not insane of me to say. But Tim Walz gave very prototype Bernie vibes, and I'm quite sad for him. But maybe I think because of course I think the candidate for the 2028 election is going to be different to Kamala Harris, because they're not going to let her run again.
Well, she didn't do as well as they were hoping for. And I think a lot of people thought Kamala was going to do so much better than she did.
I thought she was going to do. Yeah, I thought, because she was so great, everyone was so hyped, everyone was positive.
People have made this phrase, I think it was worked out. Guys are totally worked out and thought Kamala was going to win, I was so sure.
But the thing is a lot of her campaign was focused towards our generation.
Yeah,
But
and
is
we
it-
all voted for her, from what I know.
Well, yeah, but
I would have voted
We-
for her.
I think-
We-
In
What-
the UK.
a lot of the problems that caused her to not get as many votes as we thought was her campaign didn't really apply to older generations. I don't really know how much the older generations wanted to have a
Yeah.
brat president.
They didn't really care that much, and they don't really trust the youths.
Yeah, but like the trends such as the coconut tree, although I thought it was funny, I liked it.
I
but
loved them, but
I
can...
agree, but I don't know how many people thought that was like very valid as a president. Do you want your president to be brat?
I want my president's
I do, but I don't think 50-year-olds in America might not always
Do
want.
that. The people who are our age will be able to like vote in the next election, because we'll be like 21, and then
Mhm.
God, will Gen Alpha be able to vote in the next election? Let me just
No.
math real quick.
No, they won't.
No.
No, they will.
It depends
They
when you
will?
think they.
2010,
No.
isn't it?
It depends whether you think it's 2010 or 2012, because like there's a. No one's
2010
really
will.
sure. No one's really sure.
It's 2010, yes. 2012, no. But the 2032, they will. The new-
2013 won't, so we're good still then.
The year 7s or whatever.
The year
The
7.
UK.
Oh no.
But yeah, so who do we think they're gonna choose for the next presidential nominee? Because I know we can't predict it. We don't really know enough. But I think they might choose Tim Walz.
I think Tim Walz is a good
Because
option.
he's a safe option, because he's a white man, and they're never gonna put a woman forward to run ever again.
The issue with
How did Donald Trump beat a woman twice?
going for 3 times. I'm
Going
joking.
for 3 times.
But the issue with predicting the Democrats is that they have to endure the changes of Republicans. That change is going to affect who they nominate.
I think the
to go.
Democratic Party has 4 years to get their shit together, and we'll go from there. Because, I don't think they're actually that bad. I think the Democratic Party, as it is in America, is already extremely centrist, because they've been trying very, very hard to appeal to that Republican fan base. And it's just and it's not working. So I'm interested to see what they do to try and make it work.
The full Republican, 2 Republican parties.
Just get Donald Trump 2.0 to run against him and see what happens.
A fight to the Donalds.
Fight of the Donalds.
It's just Donald Trump and
Top
J.D.
Trumps. Sorry, did you enjoy that bit of comedy?
Can we have...
I had a lot of fun, thank you.
Great. What else is... But yeah, in terms of American politics, I think the hype very much goes down after a presidential election. Just because we're all following it, and we were all following it, and everyone had their
Everyone
had
was
their
talking about
maps. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, because when Donald Trump gets elected, Biden's going to show up at his inauguration, when I personally wouldn't. Let's talk about Biden. But yeah, Biden. Biden, we saw, had pardoned his son for that gun law thing that happened earlier in the year. And after previously saying that he wasn't going to pardon his son Hunter Biden, and the Republicans are very angry with it. Guns.
Okay.
Guns, okay, right. Keep states are also looked at gun laws in different states, and 45 states have a provision in their state constitution similar to the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which protects the right to keep and bear arms. We know how the big gun rights are in America.
Well, yeah, it's quite a big focus. And, in the UK, we don't really have guns. I think it's very few who do, actually. But in America, it's quite the common culture to own one.
Yeah, there's 102 guns for every 100 people, or some number
Yeah,
that's
it
equally
is.
stupid.
The thing with America, though, is with having guns, I guess it's just to do A, with culture, but B, the crime levels are also very different in America.
To be fair, the people have guns in America in case they need to rise up against the government. That's what the Second Amendment is. It's to stop,
And yet the people want a government that... Hold on. There's something here.
Find it.
I'm trying to find it. People are voting for a government that lets them use guns, and they don't question how easily that government will just allow them to have guns.
Yeah, that's weird.
Mm.
Also, you put so much of your money into the military. What do you think the gun's gonna do?
Yeah, surely there should be a free gun at this point. Everyone should get a free gun. That's where the budget's going.
One birth, one gun.
No, my point actually is they couldn't rise up against the government because the government has the military, and the military, let's face it, has better guns than the average Joe.
Nukes is
I
the
mean-
word, I think.
Yeah, well,
Nukes.
many
I
nuclear
don't
weapons.
think they'll nuke their own country.
No, but
You never know.
that's right.
You
But
never know.
the thing with America, though, is that I spoke about earlier, is that a lot of American Republican views are very, to create a vicious cycle of keeping people voting and keeping people honestly quite down low and poor, because it doesn't actually help the working class as much as it proposes.
Because something that's quite interesting is Donald Trump actually got less votes than he did in the 2020 presidential election, by about like a couple million. But the problem is, I think, that Kamala got... less people showed up for Kamala. So a lot of people, and probably including myself, blame the kind of like the undecided voters or the people that just didn't vote.
Good.
And because a lot of people think that doesn't matter, but it really does in an election where so much is on the line. And I think the only people I don't know, just like, what do you guys think is worse? People who vote for third parties or people who don't vote at all?
It feels like the same, to be honest. It was so very cut and dry between those two candidates that anything other than those two was never going to make enough of a mark.
It's essentially throwing away your vote.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think with the third parties, is that goes with people's morals. People are voting for their morals, and that's why they would vote to third party. Okay, sometimes it is just Kanye West running for president, but with a lot of third parties...
I'd forgotten he did that.
He did, but a lot of third parties, it aligns with people's values. They want to follow their religion, their morals, just their personal self. I don't think it's really a wasted vote to them. I think that's more valid than not voting.
I think people were focusing too much on their morals and less on the reality of the situation.
And let's point out that it's not the lesser of two evils, because Kamala's literally an experienced governmental prosecutor. As a rapist, and then there's that, and that's not a difficult...
I can say
Well, I think it's the idea of that in media, people, they listen to and obey what they are told, and the hypodermic syringe model is what it's referred to, where people do and copy and think what they are shown in media.
People have been, I think, very misinformed on Kamala's stance on Gaza, in that she fully supports the releasing of the hostages and the end of the suffering of the people in Gaza. And I think the problem is a lot of people sort of either listened to the first half of her speech and then tuned out, or just blanket assumed she was pro-Israel just because people have been calling for like the hostages to be released. I think a very important distinction that needs to be made is that you can be like pro hostage and still pro the people. You could be pro people, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
So like you want the hostages freed, you want people to stop dying in Gaza. You can believe in both of those things while still condemning Benjamin Netanyahu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think, because in the stage of America right now with the two major wars going on, namely the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza, I think a lot of people are worried for how the front of both of those is going to turn out, just because Trump has made it clear he's incredibly confident he can end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza just by like 24 hours. And the problem with that is a lot of people know in order to end such wars in 24 hours, it would require Ukraine losing territory and Israel being given enough weapons to wipe out a small civilization. Which isn't obviously is not positive in any way. And while the Democrats have been more open on their stances of like diplomatic negotiation and like other means, Donald Trump has made it clear that his is a policy that comes very America first, and the rest cannot, which isn't a good policy to have when America can affect so much of the world with its policies and with its thinking, and it reeks of a lack of responsibility. Do you guys know about the tariff thing?
Oh, I remember hearing something.
Yeah, so what's happening there is Donald Trump's economic policy has been widely quoted to be imposing tariffs on foreign goods. Okay. And I think on the news it said that it was giving like China, Canada and Mexico like 10-20% tariffs on foreign imports and exports, which to anyone who knows anything about economics knows that's an absolutely terrible idea. In the Depression, for an example, raising tariffs only further worsened the economy, as all it does is prompt countries in response to raise their own tariffs, and then that further damages American industry. Again, like what happened in the Great Depression. And this problem is, it means that all these people who voted on with the excuse that they were doing it for economic reasons, they're voting against their interests, because by having a tariff policy, Trump assumes that China and Canada and Mexico are just going to do what he says and roll over. But they're not going to do that. They're just going to raise their own tariffs, which will further plunge the American economy into debt, which isn't going to end very well.
The thing with tariffs is the reason why it is often promoted is just to promote this idea of we are self-sufficient, we are our own country, we can do this ourselves.
Yeah,
American
protectionism.
Can't. Yeah. Not any country could really be self-reliant in the globalization of the world.
But the thing is, I think Donald Trump thinks that with these tariff policies, what he can do to fix the economic black hole that's going to create is by removing these green policies and by fracking oil in the Alaska and and across the United States. But the problem with that is, with Western nations becoming increasingly sort of green energy focused, I don't think they're going to want to have to buy all that oil. And maybe they will. But the problem is, it undoes years of progress that the Biden administration has been trying to enforce. And I just think it's a very selfish and probably very impractical plan for the economy.
I mean, I think it's in Antarctica is expected to have been melted fairly at this point with the administration in 20 years, I believe is what they expect. For just be fully, mostly gone. Not exactly sure of the stats of how many years, but with his policies, the extremity of global warming is going to be majorly impactful.
Yeah, and I think the problem is we've had the same people in politics in America for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Because, I watched Donald Trump's inauguration in 2017 with, my mum and my dad. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, this is weird politics stuff. And I was about, 9 or 10 years old. And, now that I'm 17 and it's the same name coming up on the ballot, it just feels like in American politics we're desperately in need of some, new blood. Because in the UK, there's we've got new guys every quarter, you know what I mean? We've had so many prime ministers from so many different parties. We've had because in the UK we've lived through a Lib coalition, a Liberal coalition, we've lived through Labour, we've lived through the Conservatives. That's 3 different parties with different leaders and not with the same guy every time.
And some prime ministers only lasted 100 days.
Yes. And that's true. And the problem is, in America they don't have that because it's just the 2-party system with the same leader since 2016. And when we're nearly 10 years on, that just feels like such a stifling of any sort of opportunity for personal growth within the parties and evolution of party ideals. And I feel like if we did have some maybe younger candidates in the pool, not JD Vance, or even, who knows, maybe even JD Vance, on his own, maybe we could see some change for the better.
But when do we think we'll ever actually see a Gen Z nominating? And that's the thing, is that's going to take at least 40 years or something.
I think we've got to wait for the current electorate to die out.
Yeah, 40 years or something.
Sad as it sounds.
And then the millennials are going to take over.
The millennials. And
we need a very specifically aimed meteorite.
Yep, just for the retirement homes. But the thing is, JD Vance is the first millennial vice president. So it's a shame that it had to come in this way. But I think that maybe when Gen Z can start voting, we'll do better. But there has also been a worrying rise of misogyny and a shift to the right in these young Gen Z males, just because they all think they're oppressed. And all these issues that are men's mental health and stuff, they're all extremely important, but they only ever get brought up as points against rights for women and rights for minorities. And I think it's really unfortunate that happens, because we do need to have these conversations about men's mental health and toxic masculinity. And if we could do those in less hostile environments, I think it would be an easier discussion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is who knows? Maybe this is in a future episode.
Maybe. Is it?
Yeah.
It is. Maybe it is. Maybe
it is on the list.
Just talking about it briefly, the idea of this toxic masculinity, this hegemonic masculinity, we also have the idea of that's often due to them people thinking that feminism is only one type. I think a lot of people don't realise there are many different branches of feminism.
And additionally, how feminism isn't make women better than men; it's make everybody equal.
Radical feminism is
Yeah.
the main view of feminism of those people. When the most successful is liberal feminism, and then still even more like intersectional feminism.
And additionally, feminism shouldn't need to be watered down to be palatable to the American public. I think it should be in its glory.
Yeah, I think a lot of, in a sociological perspective, feminism is often critiqued due to the amount of branches it actually has. Because a lot of people just think, oh, they have so many different opinions, that doesn't mean they're valid. When their opinions are valid, it's just people try and find excuses not to.
Talked about all that much, have you?
I talked about religion.
We've talked about religion.
Talk.
We've
Use your
back to subject. Back to subject.
The thing with immigration is that there are policies that they are trying to improve on. That they are trying to get people who aren't documented as immigrants as an 8-year plan to try and get them to have. But the thing that's quite radical to an extent is that refugees aren't being allowed to gain citizenship, which to a lot of people think should be a policy that refugees should have the right to be citizens
I think
of
the
America.
radical thing that's happening is they're threatening to deport legal immigrants.
Well, that's true.
like
but
with
I think
green cards and
Green
papers.
cards are being stripped away very
It's-
much.
For the longest time, the narrative was always like, "Oh yeah, it's only the illegals. We're only coming after the illegals." And then they just turn around and be like, "Oh, but you people with actual papers, you also gotta go." It's like in the it's like again in the Depression when I think they deported about 400,000 Mexican Americans, even the ones that had lived there like their whole lives. They were just deported because they were seen as like competition for jobs.
The thing with America and immigrants is that a lot of America is known for this stereotypical behavior against immigration. And a lot of, in your white people who have these Christian views, who have these very Republican views, often see immigrants as quite a waste of labour. And the thing with America that is often quite difficult is that people think we should bring in immigrants. We should bring more people into the country that will help people be more inclusive. But the state of America is not going to work with that. Because people of America don't really want that. And that with immigration, going forward, it's going to be harder. But even the people who are in America, that's even the hardest with the mentioning of green cards being removed.
Because I think it's a problem that's worse in America than in England. Because we're both countries that asked for immigrants and are now unhappy about it. But I think the weirdest thing about America is that it's literally built on immigrants. Everyone who lives in America, apart from the Native Americans, who are still being treated horribly, apart from Native Americans, are descended from immigrants, fairly recently as well. Because a lot of the Irish and a lot of the Jewish, they came over in the 1920s. And it's really odd because wanting to kick out all of the immigrants means that they wouldn't have a country. But yeah.
Yeah, a large part of the workforce is often immigration. And I think the idea of that we know Trump has not had the most friendly policies on immigration.
They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there.
I mean, but even with policies such as we need to build a wall, that is quite
Keep out all the Mexicans.
Yeah, it's quite a well-known policy that I think a lot of people always just accepted. But it's extremely impactful to immigrants, even physically, but also the mental health of these immigrants is drastically being impacted. That it's going to be an extremely harsh situation and position these people are in.
Christianity and the role of religion in the state.
Because we talked about Puritanism earlier.
Puritanism, and it's kind of just a constant. Republican views are influenced, and often the idea of the New Christian Right, which I mentioned previously, is a very big organization, which is often compared to the Martin King movement. But the issue with it is it's not actually had success. But with Trump in power, similar views to Trump, and often promoted Trump, we actually might see a rise in the success of this very Christian, very radical, very Republican organization.
We've been talking about some quite depressing things, but I think it is important to have hope.
Yeah,
because the world might not end.
It's going to be okay.
It's gonna be fine.
Whenever something really horrible has happened to the earth, people have worked it out, because even if you feel as though you're desensitized to it, you still care, and you're still going to be doing things, and you're still going to be living.
We're gonna be fine. Even if they come for your rights, or your, your grandma.
Or your pets,
Or your pets, apparently. You're going to be alright, and everything's going to be fine, because it's only 4 years. And while that is a long time, we'll come out at the end and we'll never have to see a Trump presidency ever again. Please don't cut to 4 years where Trump has announced he's running for a third
age
term.
like milk, isn't it?
Another thing that is in a way comforting is that we've had other countries with way worse leaders than Trump.
Yeah.
We like to dramatize that Trump is the worst leader.
Stay safe, guys.
Stay safe. I should have done this entire podcast in an American accent, just as homage, you know?
Uh-huh.
What's
Do you
your...
want to do the outro in an American accent?
Okay, hold on, I need to think about this. I need to get in the zone. What's something American? Thank you for listening to The Societal Lens. I'm here with Charlie and Aiden, and thank you for listening to our podcast. Tune in next week for a topic that I don't know. Goodbye!
Bye!
Outing myself as a Redditor. You know that's literally all they talk about.
Okay, great. No one's going to listen to a single point you make from this point
No.
forward. I'll just cut this awkward silence out, don't worry.
No, it's okay. We like the awkward silence.
The awkward silence.
I'd just like to point out, I can hear you all, whoever is thinking, oh, don't use Wikipedia as an information system. Wikipedia is actually a really decent source of information. And everyone who's judging it and going, oh, well, anyone can edit it. No, they can't. You have
Very
to be like,
strict.
you
They
have
are
to be
very
certified, and and it's regularly checked over, and Wikipedia is actually a really, really decent source of information. So anyone judging us for using Wikipedia, or anyone else for using Wikipedia, check your privilege.
Okay, this is going in the bloopers just simply because of how long it was, but thank you, Julia.
It was necessary. Era lately. He's in his brat era, I think.
I'm cutting that.
No, okay, but